I had always been told that love is about finding the right person. But what if the right person is hidden behind a mask, pretending to be someone they're not? Alexander Hayes stood there, looking at the grand estate before him, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. A prince, a future king. Yet, here he was, disguised as nothing more than a servant, ready to live among the very people he was supposed to rule. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had everything a man could want: wealth, power, a crown. But there was something he didn't have: true love. And that's why he'd come here, to the green estate, to work for a family he had no business being around, just to find a glimpse of something real. He never imagined how it would change his life. His days as a servant began in the most unexpected of ways. The moment he stepped inside the estate, he was faced with the whirlwind that was the Green family. The father, a wealthy and cold businessman, didn't give him a second glance. The four daughters, however, were a different story. They were lively, full of life, and each one was unique in her own way. He couldn't help but feel out of place, but it didn't matter. He had a job to do, and he had to keep up the charade. The oldest daughter, Charlotte, Charlie, as her sisters affectionately called her, caught his attention the moment he saw her. She wasn't like the others. There was a quiet sadness in her eyes, a certain distance that made her different. He could tell she carried the weight of something heavy, but what that was, he couldn't yet understand. She was stunning, yes, but it was her heart that intrigued him the most. But that was a problem, because as a servant, he couldn't approach her. He couldn't show his interest. He had to remain in the background, just another faceless person in the house. Still, as the days passed, he couldn't help but find reasons to be near her. Whether it was serving her tea during her late-night reading sessions, or offering a hand when she was dealing with the stress of her father's business dealings, Alex found himself growing closer to her. She began to trust him, little by little, and that trust opened doors for conversations. She shared bits of her life with him, her dreams of escaping her family's shadow, her desire for something real and meaningful. She didn't know it, but she was revealing pieces of herself to a man who wasn't who he seemed to be, a man who would never let her know the truth. As they spoke more and more, Alex realized that his feelings for Charlie weren't just a passing attraction. He was falling for her hard, but there was a problem. If she found out who he truly was, everything would be ruined. He couldn't risk that. The only way he could truly understand what love was if he found it without his title, without his money, without anything that could taint the purity of it. But it was harder than he ever imagined. As he spent more time with Charlie, he saw her vulnerabilities, her strengths, her kindness. She was everything he never expected in a woman. And yet, he was just a servant. How could anyone ever believe she would love him? Days turned into weeks, and the more he kept his secret, the harder it became to hide his true feelings. But every time she smiled at him, every time she asked about his life, he was reminded of why he'd taken this risk in the first place. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It wasn't about his royal bloodline or the riches that awaited him. It was about love, a love that he hoped, one day, would find its way through the barriers he had built around his heart. But the truth loomed over him. What would happen if she found out? What would she think of him? Would she feel betrayed? Could she ever love him for who he truly was? These questions played on a loop in his mind, and every time he caught her gaze, he was reminded of just how deep he had fallen. He wasn't just playing a part anymore. He was living a lie, and it was eating him up inside. But for now, all he could do was stay in the shadows, waiting for the moment when everything would change, when Charlie would finally see him for who he truly was. And when that moment came, would he be ready to face the consequences? He wasn't sure, but he couldn't stop the feelings that had already taken root in his heart. Not now, not ever. Every day, Alex found himself getting more tangled in the web he had created for himself. His life as a servant in the Green household had become an unspoken routine, but one that made him question everything he had known about love. There were moments, like when Charlotte would pause for a brief conversation or ask for his help with something small, that made him feel like he was more than just a shadow in the background. But those moments were fleeting, and he knew deep down they would never last. Charlotte, or Charlie as everyone called her, was a woman of ambition and dreams. She wanted more than the life her family offered her, more than the money, the privilege, the expectations. He could see it in the way she carried herself, the way she didn't quite fit in with her sisters, who were all about appearances and social status. Charlie had something different. She had heart, but that heart was buried under layers of family pressure and the weight of expectations. Each day that Alex spent working for her family, he saw more and more of the person she truly was, the passionate artist, the thoughtful sister, the woman who longed for something real. But Alex was only a servant, and he had to keep reminding himself of that fact. He was here to observe, to learn, not to fall in love. But love had already found its way into his heart. He couldn't deny it, even if it meant risking everything. As the weeks went on, their connection grew stronger. Charlie trusted him in ways she never had with anyone else. She would confide in him about her dreams of traveling the world, of escaping the confines of her father's empire. Alex listened, offering words of encouragement, pretending to be just another man, hiding behind his mask. He wanted to tell her the truth, but the fear of losing her was too great. One night, after a particularly long day, Charlie invited him to join her for a walk in the garden. The air was crisp, and the stars above shimmered brightly in the sky, but it was the quiet between them that felt the most powerful. They walked in silence for a while before Charlie spoke, her voice soft and hesitant. "You know, I've always wondered what it would be like to live a life without all of this," she said, motioning to the grand estate around them. "To just be free, to follow my own path, without worrying about what others think." Alex glanced at her, trying to hide the lump in his throat. He couldn't tell her the truth. Not yet, but something in her words made him want to shout it from the rooftops. He wanted to tell her that she deserved all of that and more, that she was beautiful and capable of anything, but instead, he just nodded. "Sometimes we have to create our own freedom," he said, his voice low, his heart pounding. Charlie turned to him, her eyes searching his face. "Do you ever feel trapped, Alex?" she asked. The question was simple, yet it struck him to his core. Was he trapped? Of course he was. He had been living a lie for so long that he wasn't sure where the lie ended and the truth began. But he couldn't tell her that. Not yet. "I think we all feel a little trapped sometimes," he said, forcing a smile. "It's just part of life." Charlie seemed to consider this for a moment before speaking again. "I don't know if I can keep living like this," she confessed. "Every day feels like I'm just playing a role. And the more I try to break free, the more I get pulled back in." Her words hit Alex harder than he expected. He knew exactly how she felt. He had spent his entire life playing a role, too, pretending to be someone he wasn't. But for the first time in his life, he felt like he didn't want to hide anymore. He didn't want to be the prince in disguise. He wanted to be the man who was worthy of her love. But the price of revealing the truth was too high. He couldn't risk losing her. "Not like this. I understand," he said quietly. "But sometimes we have to find our own way out." They walked in silence for a while longer, the weight of their unspoken words hanging heavily between them. As they reached the end of the garden, Charlie stopped and turned to face him. "Thank you, Alex," she said softly, "for listening, for being here." Alex nodded, his heart heavy. "It's my pleasure," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. But as he walked away, he couldn't help but feel that he was losing something important. The truth was gnawing at him, pulling him in a direction he wasn't ready to go. But the more time he spent with Charlie, the more he knew that he couldn't keep pretending forever. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but one thing was clear: his life and his heart would never be the same. Alex stood in the quiet of the estate's grand hallway, his mind racing. The weight of his disguise felt heavier with each passing day. The closer he got to Charlotte, the more he found himself questioning everything. Was he truly ready to face the consequences of revealing his true identity? The bond he shared with her was undeniable, yet every moment spent with her felt like a lie. He had been careful to keep his distance, to maintain the role of the servant, but it was becoming harder and harder to ignore the deep connection that had formed between them. As the weeks went by, Alex noticed something shifting between them. Charlotte, or Charlie as everyone called her, was no longer the woman who merely sought his help with her problems. She began to rely on him in ways she hadn't before, trusting him with more personal matters. The late-night talks in the garden, their shared moments of laughter, the way she would open up to him. He began to see the cracks in her carefully built walls. But with every conversation, Alex felt more trapped. He had been raised to believe that love was something to be earned, something that would come with the right amount of sacrifice and duty. But this was different. Charlotte didn't want his title. She didn't care about the power or wealth that came with it. She saw him for who he truly was. And for the first time, Alex felt like he didn't need to hide. One evening, after a long day of errands around the estate, Charlie invited him to join her for a walk again. The estate's sprawling gardens were quiet under the moonlight, and the cool air was a welcome change from the warmth of the house. They walked side by side, the silence comfortable between them. It was during this walk that Charlie said something that stopped Alex in his tracks. "Do you ever think about what happens after we make our choices?" she asked, her voice soft and thoughtful. Alex glanced at her, unsure of where this conversation was heading. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to keep his tone casual. "I mean," she began, "once we make a choice, once we decide what we want, it's like the world just shifts. And then we're left with the consequences. Sometimes it feels like there's no turning back." She paused for a moment, her eyes searching his face as if looking for something. Alex swallowed hard, his heart racing. Did she know? Did she sense something? "I suppose," he said, his voice betraying the anxiety he was feeling. "But isn't that what life is all about? Making choices, living with them?" Charlotte nodded, her expression softening. "I suppose so. But what if you've made the wrong choice? What if you're too far gone to turn back?" Alex stopped in his tracks, his heart skipping a beat. "You're not talking about me, are you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Charlotte turned to him, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and longing. "Maybe," she replied quietly. "But I'm talking about myself, too." Alex took a deep breath. "Charlie, you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to carry this burden on your own." She smiled sadly, her gaze dropping to the ground. "I know, but sometimes I feel like I'm trapped in my own life. Like I'm living for everyone else, except for myself. And I don't know how to get out." Alex took a step closer to her, his heart aching for her. He had been living with his own secret for so long, but now, hearing her words, it felt like they shared something more than just a connection. They both carried burdens, hidden truths that weighed them down. "You're not alone, Charlie," he said, his voice steady now. "You're not alone in this. I'm here for you. I always will be." Charlie looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. For a moment, there was silence between them. And then, as if something inside her clicked, she stepped closer. "I don't know what I would do without you, Alex," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "You're the only person who makes me feel like I can breathe again." Alex felt his heart race in his chest. He was so close to telling her everything, to revealing his true identity, but something held him back. He didn't want to lose her. Not now. Not when he was finally starting to understand what love really meant. But at the same time, he knew he couldn't keep pretending forever. "You don't have to thank me," he said softly, his hand reaching for hers. "I'm just glad to be here. With you." Charlie's hand trembled in his, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she squeezed his hand gently, a silent promise passing between them. "I don't know what the future holds," she said, her voice steady now. "But I want to find out. With you." Alex's heart soared at her words. For the first time in weeks, he felt like maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. He didn't need to hide anymore. Not with her. Not anymore. But there was still one thing he had to do. He had to tell her the truth. And soon. Because in the end, love couldn't be built on lies. He couldn't live a lie anymore. The time for secrets was running out. Alex had spent the last few days wrestling with his conscience. The connection he shared with Charlie was undeniable. Every moment spent with her made him feel more like the man he wanted to be. But he knew he couldn't keep pretending forever. The time had come for the truth to come out. He had to tell her who he really was. It wasn't just the weight of his secret that burdened him. It was the fear that once she knew, everything they had built would come crashing down. He couldn't bear the thought of losing her, not now. Not after everything they had shared. One evening, After a quiet dinner in the garden, where Charlie had once again confided in him about her struggles and her dreams of a life beyond the walls of her father's estate, Alex knew it was time. They were sitting together on a bench under the stars, the sound of the night's breeze rustling the leaves around them. Charlie was leaning against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "Do you ever wonder if we're doing enough to change the world?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex could feel his heart pounding in his chest, but he took a deep breath. This was it, the moment he had been dreading and yearning for all at once. He turned slightly to face her, his voice low and steady. "Charlie, there's something I need to tell you," he began. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with curiosity and concern. "What is it?" she asked. Alex hesitated for a moment, the words catching in his throat. He had never felt more vulnerable in his life. "I'm not who you think I am," he said, his voice trembling ever so slightly. "I've been hiding the truth from you, and it's tearing me apart." Her brows furrowed, a look of confusion crossing her face. "What do you mean?" she asked, sitting up straighter, pulling away just a bit. Alex's heart ached at the distance, but he pushed forward. "I'm not just some servant, Charlie," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm a prince. My real name is Alexander Hayes. I come from the kingdom of Cordovia." He waited for her to react, to say something, but she just stared at him in silence. He could see the wheels turning in her mind as she processed what he had just said. "A prince?" she finally repeated, her voice barely audible. Alex nodded, his heart sinking. "I didn't want to tell you like this," he said, his voice filled with regret. "But I couldn't keep pretending. I came here to find something real, something beyond the wealth and the title. I wanted to be loved for who I am, not for my title." There was a long pause as Charlie sat there, processing everything he had just revealed. Alex could see the shock on her face, the disbelief in her eyes. He couldn't tell if she was angry, hurt, or just overwhelmed. Finally, she spoke, her voice shaking. "You lied to me," she said, her words sharp. "You've been lying to me this whole time." Alex felt a pang of guilt in his chest, but he didn't flinch. He knew this was coming. "I know," he said softly, "and I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you, Charlie. I just know," she interrupted, standing up abruptly, her eyes flashing with emotion. "You don't get to apologize for this. You don't get to play with my feelings like this." Her words stung, but Alex didn't back down. He couldn't. "I know I've made a mistake," he said, standing up as well. "But I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant to deceive you." Charlie turned away from him, pacing a few steps before stopping and turning to face him again. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "Why didn't you trust me?" Alex's heart broke at her words, but he knew the answer. "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that if you knew the truth, you wouldn't look at me the same way. Afraid that you'd see me as just another prince, just another man with everything handed to him and nothing earned." Charlie's face softened for a moment, and for a brief second, Alex thought she might understand. But then she spoke again, her voice cold. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore," she said, her words cutting deeper than he ever expected. "I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way." Alex's heart dropped. He had known this was a possibility, but hearing her say it aloud made it feel real, like a door closing that he could never open again. "Charlie, please," he said, his voice desperate. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I love you. And I will do anything to prove that to you, if you'll just give me a chance." She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face as if trying to find the truth behind the mask he had worn for so long. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "I need time," she said. "I need time to figure out if I can trust you again. But right now, I can't." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Alex standing there in the garden, feeling more alone than he had in a long time. The reality of what he had done hit him harder than ever. He had risked everything for the chance at love, but now he was left with nothing. He had no title, no kingdom, and now he might lose the one person he had come to care for more than anything else. He knew he had to fight for her, but would it be enough? Would the truth be enough to bring them back together? Or had he destroyed everything with his lies? The uncertainty weighed heavily on him as he watched Charlie disappear into the distance, unsure of what would happen next. The days following their confrontation were the hardest of Alex's life. Charlie hadn't spoken to him much, and when she did, it was brief, almost cold. She had pulled away from him, creating a distance that he couldn't bridge no matter how much he tried. He respected her space, giving her the time she had asked for, but inside, he was dying. Every time he saw her, whether it was across the room during dinner or while passing her in the hallway, his heart ached. The love he had for her was growing stronger, but so was the fear that it might be too late. He hadn't been honest with her, and now the consequences of that lie were more real than ever. Alex tried to focus on his duties, but the weight of his secret and the distance between him and Charlie made it nearly impossible to concentrate. Every corner he turned, every task he did, felt empty without her presence. He missed the small, quiet moments they had shared, the talks about dreams and fears, the way she would smile at him when no one was watching, as if they shared something no one else could understand. It had only been a week, but it felt like a lifetime. He couldn't stand the silence any longer. One evening, he found himself standing outside the estate's grand library, staring at the closed door, unsure whether to knock or walk away. He had to talk to her. He couldn't let this slip away without trying to fix it. His heart told him that this was the right thing to do, but his mind was clouded with doubt. What if she didn't want to hear it? What if she had already made up her mind? The thought made him sick to his stomach, but he couldn't live with the uncertainty any longer. He had to try. Taking a deep breath, Alex knocked softly. After a moment, the door opened, and there she stood, Charlie. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw him, and for a brief second, he thought she might close the door in his face. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped aside, allowing him to enter. "I didn't expect to see you," she said, her voice guarded but not unkind. Alex swallowed hard, trying to steady his nerves. "I know you need time," he said, his voice low, "but I can't keep pretending that everything's fine when it's not. I owe you an apology, and I need you to hear me out." Charlie's gaze softened, but she didn't say anything. She motioned for him to sit, and he did, his hands trembling in his lap. "I know I hurt you," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I never meant to deceive you, Charlie. I just wanted to be loved for who I am, not for my title. I wanted to experience life as a real person, not as a prince, and I thought I could do that here with you. But I see now that I've made everything worse by keeping this secret." Charlie crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "You should have told me sooner," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "You should have trusted me enough to let me in. Instead, you chose to lie, and now I don't know what to believe anymore." Alex's heart sank. He had known this was coming, but hearing it from her was harder than he could have imagined. "I was afraid," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid of losing you. Afraid that once you knew the truth, you would never look at me the same way. I didn't want to be just another prince to you. I wanted to be Alex, the man you could see beyond the crown and the kingdom." For a long time, there was nothing but silence between them. Charlie didn't say anything, but her eyes softened as she stared at him, as if weighing his words. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "You're right. You should have trusted me. I would have understood. But now, I don't know if I can just forget everything." Alex nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words. "I don't expect you to forget. I just want a chance to prove to you that I'm not the man I've been pretending to be. I'm not perfect, but I'm willing to fight for you, for us." Charlie's gaze flickered to the floor, her fingers tightening around the edges of her sleeves. She was silent for a long moment, and Alex could feel the tension building. "I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you," she said finally, her voice soft but steady. "But I don't want to lose what we had. I don't know what the future holds, but I need time. Time to figure out if I can trust you again." Alex felt a surge of hope, even though it wasn't the full reconciliation he had hoped for. "I'll give you all the time you need," he said, his voice steady. "But just know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Charlie looked at him, her eyes searching his face for something. Reassurance, perhaps, or just a glimmer of hope. "I'll think about it," she said softly, her voice filled with uncertainty. Alex nodded, understanding that it would take time to rebuild what they had lost. But he was willing to wait. He would do whatever it took to show her that the man sitting before her was the man she deserved. As he stood up to leave, Charlie placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. "Thank you for being honest with me," she said quietly. Alex smiled faintly, his heart lifting. "Thank you for giving me a chance to make things right." As he walked out of the library and into the cool night air, Alex couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was willing to fight for her, for them. And that was all that mattered. Days passed, and though Charlie had given him the time he asked for, Alex could feel the distance between them slowly starting to close. It wasn't the same as it had been before, but it was a start. She was still unsure, still processing everything, and he could see the wheels turning in her mind whenever they spoke. But there was something different in her eyes now, something that told him she was willing to try. It was the smallest of shifts, but it gave him hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. He spent the days proving to her that he wasn't just the prince she had once thought him to be. He continued with his duties, as he always had, but now with a renewed sense of purpose. He did everything he could to show Charlie that he was willing to be the man she needed, not the one his title had made him out to be. But there were times when the past crept back in, reminding him of everything he had hidden from her. The weight of his secrets still bore down on him, and though he had told her the truth, there were still parts of him that worried she might never fully forgive him. Still, he couldn't go back. He had taken a step toward honesty, and he couldn't retreat into the shadows now. One afternoon, after finishing his work around the estate, Alex found himself wandering the garden, deep in thought. The autumn air was cool, and the rustling of the leaves in the trees was the only sound that broke the silence. It was in these moments that he did his best thinking. And today, as he walked, his mind was occupied with one thing: Charlie. He had told her the truth. He had apologized. Now, all he had to do was wait for her to decide if she was ready to forgive him. But he knew that forgiveness wasn't something that could be rushed. It wasn't something that could be forced. It had to come on her terms, in her own time. Alex paused near a bench, looking up at the sky as the sun began to set. The light was soft, casting a golden glow over the estate. It was beautiful, peaceful even, and for a moment, he allowed himself to forget the uncertainty that had been hanging over him. He had been so consumed by the need for her forgiveness that he hadn't stopped to consider how far they had come. It had been a week since their conversation, and though things were far from perfect, they were better. She was talking to him again, slowly, cautiously, but the walls were coming down. He hadn't lost her. Yet, as he sat on the bench, lost in thought, he heard footsteps approaching. He turned to see Charlie walking toward him. She was dressed casually, her hair loose around her shoulders, and there was something about her that seemed lighter than before. His heart skipped a beat. "Hey," she said softly, her voice warm but guarded. "Can we talk?" Alex stood up immediately, his pulse quickening. "Of course," he said, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling. Inside him, they walked a few steps until they were out of earshot from the house, standing in the quiet of the garden. Charlie hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice soft but clear. "And I need to be honest with you. I've been holding back, not just because of what happened, but because I've been afraid." Alex's heart tightened at his chest. "Afraid of what?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Charlie took a deep breath, looking up at the sky as if gathering her thoughts. "Afraid that if I let myself feel anything for you, it would be a mistake," she said. "Afraid that if I trust you again, I'll be hurt. I've been living with that fear for so long, and I didn't know how to move past it." Alex felt a surge of compassion for her. He understood. He had been living in fear too, afraid that his truth would push her away. "Charlie, I can't promise you that things will be perfect," he said, his voice low and sincere. "But I can promise you that I will always be honest with you from here on out. I'll fight for you, for us, every single day." She turned to face him, her eyes soft but uncertain. "I'm not asking for perfection," she said quietly. "I'm asking for a chance, a real chance, to start over, without any more lies, without any more secrets. Alex took her hand in his heart racing. "You have my word," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll give you all of me. No more pretending. No more secrets." For a moment, they just stood there, the silence between them filled with the unspoken understanding that this was a new beginning, a fresh start. Charlie looked up at him, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. I think I'm ready," she said, her voice full of uncertainty but also hope. Alex's heart soared. He had spent so long living in fear, afraid of what the future held. But now, standing here with her, he realized that maybe the future was worth fighting for after all. Maybe it was worth everything. As they stood together, the last remnants of the sun disappeared below the horizon, leaving behind the promise of a new day. And in that moment, Alex knew that no matter what happened, he would fight for this love. He would fight for Charlie. And this time, he would do it right. The days that followed their conversation marked a turning point for Alex and Charlie. There was a palpable shift in the air between them, a tension that neither could ignore, but it wasn't the heavy, uncomfortable tension of secrecy anymore. It was the quiet anticipation of something new, something that was slowly taking root between them. They spent more time together in the following days, and each moment, though small, brought them closer. Charlie still held back at times, her trust not fully restored, but she was trying. She was opening up again, slowly. Alex could feel it. He knew she wasn't going to forget so easily, but he also knew that it wasn't just about forgiving him. It was about trusting him again. That was the hardest part. He could see it in her eyes every time they spoke. The lingering doubt, the fear. He had to work through it, one step at a time. One evening, as they sat together in the garden once more, Charlie broke the silence. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice soft and hesitant, as though she were treading carefully. Alex looked at her, his heart in his throat. "About what?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "About us," she replied, glancing up at him with a small, uncertain smile. "I've been thinking about what you said, about how you're not just a prince, how you're Alex. And I've been thinking about how I've been holding back." Alex's heart skipped a beat. "Charlie," he began, but she raised a hand to stop him. "I know you've already apologized. I know I've been difficult, but I've been holding on to this fear. Fear that if I let myself fall, if I let you in, it'll just be another mistake. Another thing I can't control." But the truth is, she hesitated, her eyes searching his face for something. Reassurance. Maybe, or a sign that this was worth it. "The truth is, I don't want to live in fear anymore. I don't want to be afraid of love. And I don't want to push you away because of it. I know it's going to take time, but I think I'm ready to trust again." Alex felt a weight lift from his chest, as if the air around them had cleared. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle but steady. "I promise, Charlie, I'll never give you a reason to doubt me again. I'll prove to you every day that I'm here. For you. For us." Charlie's eyes softened as she looked at him. "I want to believe that," she said, her voice full of sincerity. "I really do. But I also know that love isn't perfect. It's messy. It's complicated. But I'm willing to try. With you." The warmth between them grew, and for the first time in a long time, Alex felt a sense of peace. It wasn't perfect. There was still a lot to work through, but they were in it together. And that was all he needed. The following days brought small moments of healing. They spoke more openly about their pasts, their fears, and their hopes for the future. Charlie's walls were coming down, and Alex could see the person she had been hiding behind them. The woman who dreamed of a life outside the constraints of her family's expectations, the woman who longed for love without conditions. And Alex, for the first time, wasn't afraid of what the future held. He didn't need to be a prince to be worthy of her. He just needed to be himself. One afternoon, as they sat together in the library, Alex decided it was time to show her just how much she meant to him. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Charlie looked at him with curiosity as he held it out to her. "What's this?" she asked, a teasing smile on her lips. Alex opened the box to reveal a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm shaped like a heart. "I know it's not much," he said, his voice quiet but full of meaning, but I wanted to give you something that shows how much I care. Something that's not just about a title or money, but about us. And the promise I'm making to you, to always be there, no matter what." Charlie's smile softened, and she took the bracelet in her hand, her eyes filled with emotion. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you." Alex smiled back, his heart full. "It's just the beginning, Charlie. There's so much more I want to give you. So much more I want to do for us." As Charlie slipped the bracelet on her wrist, Alex knew that this was just the beginning of their journey together. They still had a long road ahead, full of challenges and uncertainty. But for the first time, Alex was ready to face it. With Charlie by his side, he knew they could build a future, one where love, trust, and honesty were the foundation. And maybe, just maybe, they could finally have the love story they both deserved. The following weeks were filled with small moments of connection, each one bringing Alex and Charlie closer. But neither of them could shake the lingering doubt that sat quietly between them. The road to rebuilding their relationship wasn't going to be simple. There were still questions in Charlie's eyes, moments where she would pull away slightly, her guard still not fully down. But Alex could feel the shift. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. They had something to build on now, and that was enough for him. But the world around them wasn't as patient. Charlie's father, Gregory Green, had made his disapproval clear ever since he found out about Alex's true identity. He didn't trust him, and it was obvious in every interaction. Alex had expected as much. Being the son of a king, he was used to skepticism. But Charlie's relationship with her father was different. Her family had always been her world, her safety net, and it terrified her to think about what would happen if she chose Alex over the expectations of her father. One evening, as the grand estate was bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, Alex found himself standing in front of the massive front doors, his hand hovering over the doorknob. The uncertainty he had felt months ago was nothing compared to the weight of what he was about to do. He had to face Gregory Green. He had to prove that he was worthy of Charlie, not just as a prince, but as a man. Taking a deep breath, Alex opened the door and stepped inside. The house was quiet, too quiet. It was as if the air had thickened, every step he took echoing against the marble floors. He made his way through the hallways, trying to steady his nerves, but his heart was racing. When he finally reached Gregory's study, he hesitated before knocking on the door. "Come in," Gregory's voice called from the other side, deep and commanding. Alex stepped in, closing the door behind him. Gregory was sitting behind his large desk, papers scattered in front of him, his brow furrowed in concentration. But when he looked up, his eyes narrowed, recognizing the man who had dared to enter his domain. "Prince Alexander," Gregory said, his voice dripping with disdain. "I didn't expect to see you here. Is there something you need?" Alex stood tall, his shoulders squared, trying to ignore the chill running through him. He wasn't here to fight. He wasn't here to argue. He was here for something much more important. "I'm here to talk about Charlie," Alex said, his voice firm but respectful. Gregory raised an eyebrow. "Charlie?" he repeated, as if the name was a strange thing on his lips. "What exactly do you think you're doing, coming here to discuss my daughter?" Alex took a step forward, his eyes steady. "I care about her, more than you can imagine," he said. "And I'm not here to take her away from you. I'm not here to disrupt her life. But I want you to understand something. I love her. I want to build a future with her. And I'm asking for your blessing." There was a long silence. Gregory didn't say a word. He simply stared at Alex, his eyes cold, calculating. "You think I would give you my blessing?" Gregory finally asked, his voice almost a whisper, but still laced with authority. "You, a prince, pretending to be something you're not. A man who lied to my daughter, who used her trust as some kind of game." Alex swallowed, his throat tight. "I never wanted to deceive her," he said, his voice trembling slightly with the weight of the words. "I just wanted to be someone she could trust. Someone who loved her for who she is, not for her father's wealth or my title." Gregory's eyes flickered, his gaze narrowing. "You think I care about titles? I care about my daughter's future. I care about what's best for her. And I care about that too," Alex said quickly. "I'm not here to take anything from her, except for her heart. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm here to do everything I can to make things right." Gregory leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest. "You've got a lot of nerve, coming here and asking for my approval," he muttered. "You think this is just about you and Charlie? This is about her entire future. This is about her family. She has responsibilities, obligations, and you." Gregory paused, his face hardening. "You're nothing but a distraction." Alex didn't flinch. He had heard worse in his life. He had faced countless obstacles, but none as intimidating as this. "If you think that's all I am, then you don't know me at all," he said quietly. "But I'm not here to prove anything to you. I'm here because I believe in what Charlie and I have, and I'm asking for the chance to show her that I can be the man she deserves." Gregory didn't respond right away. He simply stared at Alex, as if weighing him, evaluating him. The tension between them was thick, but Alex didn't back down. He knew he couldn't. This wasn't about titles or status anymore. This was about love. Finally, Gregory sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly, as if the weight of the conversation had worn him down. "You've got guts," he said quietly. "I'll give you that." He paused again, as if thinking carefully about his next words. "But don't think for a second that I won't be watching you. I will be watching every move you make. You're not just playing with my daughter's heart. You're playing with everything she's ever known. Don't make me regret this." Alex nodded, relief flooding through him, but he kept his expression serious. "I won't," he said, his voice steady. "I promise." With that, he turned and left the room, the weight of the conversation still hanging over him. But as he walked down the hallway, he felt something shift inside him. He had faced the man who could have destroyed everything, and he hadn't backed down. And in that moment, he knew he was ready. Ready to fight for Charlie. Ready to prove to her, and to her father, that he was the man she deserved. No more secrets. No more lies. Just love. Weeks had passed since the tense conversation with Gregory Green, and while things had started to feel somewhat lighter between Alex and Charlie, the road ahead still felt uncertain. Alex had spent the last several days proving himself, working even harder than before, showing Charlie that he was there for her in every possible way. He had learned to take things slow, not rushing her, but letting her come to him when she was ready. Every shared moment, every quiet conversation, every gentle touch spoke volumes about their evolving connection. But Charlie was still grappling with the weight of her father's words. She hadn't said much about the conversation with Gregory, but Alex could tell she was still processing it. The distance between them wasn't physical, but emotional. She wasn't shutting him out, but there were times when he could see the doubts lingering in her eyes, moments when she would pull back, just for a second, as if unsure of what to do next. One evening, as they sat in the study, Charlie finally broke the silence. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, her voice low, her fingers absently tracing the edge of her teacup. Alex looked up from his book, his heart suddenly in his throat. "About what?" he asked, setting the book aside. Charlie paused, her gaze drifting to the window, as though searching for the right words. "About what my father said," she began, her voice steady but laced with uncertainty. "I've always known he's been protective, but what he said about you, about us, really got to me." Alex's heart clenched. "Charlie, I know it's not easy. I know it feels like we're walking on thin ice, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm not just going to walk away because things get hard." She turned to face him, her expression soft but conflicted. "It's not that simple," she said quietly. "I've always been in his shadow, always done what was expected of me. And now, with you, it's different. It's like, I don't know if I can ever fully step out of his world." Alex's chest tightened at the vulnerability in her voice. "You don't have to, Charlie," he said gently. "You don't have to choose between me and your father. I don't want you to feel like you're losing everything just because you're choosing me. I'm here for you, no matter what that means." Charlie took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But that's just it, Alex. It's not just about me choosing you. It's about choosing myself. For once, I've always been the daughter, the one who did what was expected. But what about what I want? What about me? And what makes me happy?" Alex reached out, taking her hand in his. "Charlie, you've always known what makes you happy. I see it in you. I see it every time you smile, every time you talk about your dreams. But you don't have to sacrifice them for me. If anything, I want to help you build those dreams." She looked at him, her eyes searching his face, as if looking for something she hadn't quite found yet. "You really mean that?" she asked softly. Alex nodded, his heart full. "Ido, I'm not asking you to change, Charlie. I'm asking you to be yourself, the real you. And I'll be right here, supporting you, no matter where that leads." For the first time in weeks, Charlie's face softened, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "I'm not sure what the future holds," she whispered, her thumb lightly tracing the back of his hand. "But I know I'm ready to find out. With you." Alex felt a wave of relief wash over him, and for the first time, he didn't feel the weight of their past or the uncertainty of their future. In that moment, all he knew was that they had something real, something worth fighting for. "Then let's find out together," he said, his voice filled with emotion. They sat in silence for a while, the world outside the study window slowly fading into the quiet of the night. For once, it felt like they were on the same page. They didn't need to have all the answers. They didn't need to know exactly where their journey would take them. What mattered was that they were facing it together. In the days that followed, things began to change between them. Slowly but surely, they started to rebuild what had been broken, taking each step forward with more confidence. There were still moments of doubt, still times when Charlie would pull away slightly, but they were growing. They were learning how to trust each other again. And Alex, for the first time in his life, didn't feel like he was pretending. He didn't feel like he had to be someone he wasn't. He was simply Alex, and that was enough. One afternoon, a few weeks later, as they sat in the garden together, Charlie turned to him, her expression more serious than usual. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice steady, "and I've realized something. I want to be with you, Alex. Not because of your title or who you are, but because of who you are to me." Alex's heart soared. "Charlie," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "you don't know how much that means to me." She smiled softly,